Okay, let's dive right into this explainer by confronting a massive, absolutely undeniable shift happening in our society right now. Artificial intelligence is automating routine cognitive tasks at a breakneck pace. Algorithms are writing reports, generating images, and even acting as tutors. Because of this, we're basically forced to urgently rethink our entire educational system. We're talking about a system built over a century ago, one specifically designed to produce compliant industrial workers for a world that frankly just doesn't exist anymore. The old conveyor belt model of education simply cannot keep up with where we are going.
For years now, we've been asking how to train children to compete with machines. But honestly, that is entirely the wrong question. What we really need to be asking is what makes us uniquely human. Rather than forcing students to compete with algorithms in things like rote memorization and repetitive analysis, we need to completely shift our focus to what AI absolutely cannot do. Things like collaborating with peers, caring for living ecosystems, thinking ethically through complex problems, and creating physical beauty in the real world.
The contrast between where we are and where we need to go is pretty stark. On one side, you have the outdated factory model. Picture it. Students sitting sedentary under fluorescent lights, filling in bubbles on standardized worksheets in what are essentially test prep factories. But on the other side, we have the Solarpunk model. This envisions schools as vibrant community hubs, functioning as actual living ecosystems, where outdoor, hands-on learning connects students directly to reality. It's a complete paradigm shift, a real game changer.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to map out this transformation step by step, starting with the end of factory schools, defining Solarpunk, exploring the 4A education model, diving into the curriculum of hope, and finally deepening human wisdom. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The end of factory schools.
Today's test prep factories are leaving students fundamentally and emotionally disconnected. The learning is entirely abstract, and it's so sedentary. Kids sit indoors for up to 7 hours a day, mostly staring at screens, learning about ecosystems from sterile textbooks in an environmentally barren room. Think about this for a second. It has literally gotten to the point where many children today can easily identify dozens of corporate logos, but couldn't name a single native plant growing in their own neighborhood. That's wild, right?
Moving on to part 2. What exactly is Solarpunk education?
So, what is Solarpunk? Well, it's a cultural and philosophical movement that imagines a genuinely hopeful future. But here is the absolutely critical distinction we need to make. Solarpunk is not anti-technology, and it is definitely not about going backward to some primitive state. Instead, it asks a brilliant question. What if technology served life? It's all about integrating advanced tools like artificial intelligence and renewable energy grids with deep ecological wisdom, local agriculture, and human-scale living. Just picture solar panels beautifully covered in climbing vines.
All right, part 3, the 4A education model.
This brings us to the 4A model, because if we aren't optimizing for standard test scores anymore, what are we actually optimizing for? First up is awareness, deeply understanding ecosystems and systems thinking. Second is adaptability, which is the ability to solve novel problems in rapidly changing environments. Third is autonomy, developing practical independence, like knowing how to grow your own food or repair tools. And finally, authenticity, discovering a meaningful identity that goes way beyond just consumer culture. These are inherently human skills, and they are incredibly difficult for an algorithm to automate.
Let's get into the mechanics in part 4, the curriculum of hope.
Now, when you hear the phrase eco-school, you might picture kids just sort of having unstructured playtime in the dirt. But actually, scratch that. Make no mistake, this is a highly rigorous academic environment. Students navigate a very structured 4-phase project development cycle. They start off with discovery and research using AI tools, then they move into design and prototyping using Stanford design thinking, then they physically build and test their prototypes using the scientific method, and finally they share and scale their solutions with the wider community. And they definitely don't do this alone. Working in Kagan cooperative structures, students operate in teams of 4, and they rotate through very specific roles every quarter. You have the lead researcher managing the AI deep dives, the design engineer handling the physical prototyping and safety protocols, the communications specialist producing AI-assisted podcasts and media, and the systems thinker focusing on ecological impact and scalability. This isn't just your standard group work. It's a perfect simulation of how modern, interdisciplinary, real-world startups operate.
Let's see how this actually plays out over the 3 years of middle school, because the progression is super impressive. In 6th grade, they start with foundations,
doing things like coffee ground mushroom growing labs and building cardboard solar ovens. By 7th grade, they're scaling up to plastic bottle biogas digesters and testing insulation for sustainable housing. And by 8th grade, they're tackling innovation, implementing vertical farming and zero-waste manufacturing systems. Suddenly, biology, chemistry, and physics become deeply meaningful because the students are actually using them to build real solutions.
And alongside that core curriculum, students also tackle Genius Hour. And guys, the things they are engineering here are just mind-blowing. We are literally talking about 13-year-olds building atmospheric water generators that pull drinking water right out of the humidity in the air. They're building spirulina growing labs with automated pH adjustments and even manufacturing cargo bikes from recycled steel frames. They completely transition from being passive consumers to active creators.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Deepening Human Wisdom.
Because look, building green technology and knowing how to weld a cargo bike is really only half the equation. If we want a truly sustainable future, we absolutely must cultivate wise, grounded, and ethical citizens. They achieve this through a rigorous 20-seminar annual curriculum. Students regularly gather in Socratic dialogues to discuss massive, weighty topics like governance, justice, and culture. They pull from a huge variety of texts ranging from ancient indigenous wisdom all the way to modern eco-poetry and environmental justice case studies. This is where they develop their ethical thinking, practice nonviolent communication, and learn how to actually make democratic decisions as a community.
Consider this specific prompt from their seminar on the 7th generation principle. Just listen to this.
If you knew your great-great-grandchildren would have to live with the consequences of a decision you make today, how would that change your choice? Posing questions like that actively trains young minds to break out of the short-term, instant gratification mindset of modern consumerism. Instead, they practice long-term empathy and intergenerational justice. It asks them to truly weigh the future weight of their present actions.
Ultimately, this whole educational model transforms the school itself. It goes from being this isolated academic island where learning is fragmented and totally disconnected from local needs into a community resilient center. The school campus literally becomes a neighborhood emergency hub, a site for local food production, and a community makerspace. Imagine if your local neighborhood school functioned this way. A place where students don't just study sustainability so they can pass a test, but they actually provide it for their neighbors.
If you take away anything from this explainer, let it be the concept of practical hope. Instead of the paralyzing, apocalyptic dread that is overwhelming so many young people today, Solarpunk education gives them a shovel, a blueprint, and genuine agency. It empowers students with the mindset and the practical, hands-on skills to literally build a living garden city right out of the concrete.
So as we face this rapidly changing, AI-driven future, we've got a massive choice to make. We have to ask ourselves, are we going to stubbornly keep building these standardized test prep factories that prepare kids for a world that no longer exists? Or are we ready to rethink education entirely and start planting the seeds for a more beautiful, deeply human civilization? Because the blueprint is right here.